Hello, I'm Tim Rogers. You are watching my review on Kotaku.com for Kojima Productions and Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding, a game written, designed, and directed by Hideo Kojima. Before we get started, a disclaimer. If you're watching this video after you've already played Death Stranding, you might notice that I avoid discussion and demonstration of many of the core game systems and plot points. I did this intentionally because I'm publishing this video a full week before the release of the game. I make this disclaimer here up front because I'm aware of the high possibility that you might be watching this video 10 years after I post it. Because, you see, back in 2002, I wrote an essay comparing Metal Gear Solid 2 to modern Japanese literature. To be perfectly honest, I wrote that essay to troll exactly one specific person in a LiveJournal comment. When I decided to publish the essay on my friends' website at insertcredit.com, I didn't expect to see people continuing to link it on Twitter 17 years later. Heck, I didn't even expect Twitter to exist. Today, at age 40, I would like to throw as much sincerity into this video as I did with insincerity in that blog post at age 23. However, I would also like to adhere with utmost respect to Sony's review embargo guidelines, which dictate that I use no more than 20 minutes of footage and preserve as many of the game's stupendous surprises as humanly possible. What I'm getting at is, expect to hear a lot of nebulous, emotional, textural loquaciousness out of me, and also expect to see a lot of repeated footage of Death Stranding's protagonist Sam Porter Bridges spraying a full bursting bladder's worth of Monster Energy drink off the edge of a sheer cliff. At any rate, if you clicked this video expecting a quote-unquote normal review of Death Stranding, I'd suggest you punch in 911 right now. Then, keep your finger of choice poised at the ready over the call button. Hello, I'm Tim Rogers. You are right now watching my video review of Death Stranding on Kotaku.com, and did you know I'm watching it right alongside you? I thought I would just pop in for a second to provide a couple of director comments, because I understand the review can be quite dense and difficult to understand, like the game. And yes, Sony is actually limiting me to using only 20 minutes of original gameplay footage that I've captured for myself, which I find quite amusing. I mean, reviewing this game in general was a bit of a challenge. It was a very long game, and not only that, they've been playing a long game with this long game. How do you even review a game that has literally 900 trailers? Okay, maybe there's not exactly 900 of them. It has about 889 trailers. And today, Hideo Kojima went ahead and released a new trailer of Death Stranding, the launch trailer. And it is just wildly full of spoilers. I wouldn't want you to have that in your head. If you already watched the launch trailer of the game, which Kojima put up, I mean, good luck keeping it out of your head throughout this game. So yeah, this video has a lot of repeated footage and a lot of footage from the older trailers in it. Because I figure that's kind of in the spirit of the thing, right? I mean, Death Stranding, the metagame is almost as exciting as the game. After 3 years of the public using its very name as target practice for derisive speculation, Death Stranding has at last graduated from art school and transformed into a product you can buy. Right about now, one question drips from the tips of every game liker's lips. Is Death Stranding a real video game? With triumphant loudness and sparkling clarity, allow me to answer that question. Death Stranding is a real video game. I have played all of it. That brings us to the second and most important question that has been cramming my Twitter DM inbox since the day I was allowed to tweet that I am playing and reviewing Death Stranding.
Is Death Stranding good?
The answer to that question is, how dare you expect another human human to answer that question for you. Have you not seen the dozens of minutes of video footage of this game released over the past 3 years? If you have, and you're interested, play the game. If you haven't, and you're still interested, play the game. Googling theories about Death Stranding's plot will qualify as a hobby for millions of people for years. The Death Stranding subreddit right now, today, 2 weeks before the release of the game, is pretty much Little League compared to the MLB that will ensue once this game finally lands. If that sounds exciting to you right now, play the game. If you are so wary of spoilers that your skin right now as you listen to my voice somewhat resembles that of Sam Porter Bridges when he senses a BT in this early trailer for Death Stranding, take my advice and do not even watch this video. Because let's face it, I'm just going to talk a lot until I've talked too much. Again, in the spirit of Hideo Kojima, allow me to attach an epilogue to my spoiler warning. As a lifelong observer of Hideo Kojima, as someone whose first video game rental ever was Metal Gear on the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1988, playing Death Stranding possessing no foreknowledge of its plot or gameplay outside the arcane, ludicrous whale burger of imagery contained within its stylistically bodacious trailers, tantamounted to a cathedral of joyful delights. I would not wish the shrill shock of this experience sabotaged in the slightest for any other connoisseur by an instrument so mundane as a game design dissection. In summary, around yonder corner crouches a game whose very gameplay constitutes a spoiler for millions of its already devoted fans. I say to you all,
the heck are you watching this for?
Perhaps you wish me to tell you if it's good or not. Listen, with Death Stranding, we finally have the opportunity to see what would happen if the narcs upstairs forgot Hideo Kojima's phone number. Death Stranding is an instant classic that video game players, designers, writers, and thinkers will consider and discuss for the foreseeable future. This is my opinion at its most serious. You can close the tab now. Please come back later and watch the whole thing, though. Please. There's lots of footage of a Pomeranian puppy in here, so come back and watch it for that, maybe. For those who have stuck around, you might have noticed that Kotaku's Heather Alexandra has published a written review on the Kotaku.com website. You might be thinking, 2 reviews? Your question has 2 answers. The first answer is that Death Stranding is a game so big, you would be a fool to review it just once. The second answer is, you're wrong. It's not 2 reviews. It's 6 reviews, because my review is 5 reviews. In order to appropriately pontificate upon the game event that is Death Stranding and its ramifications, I felt the need to review it separately as a game, as a pet, as a film, as a book, and finally, as a piece of work by the artist Hideo Kojima. Tim Rogers for Kotaku.com presents a video game review starring, designed, directed, written, and edited by Tim Rogers of Kojima Productions and Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding, a video game designed, directed, and written by Hideo Kojima. Sony Interactive Entertainment sent me a download code for Death Stranding on Monday, October 14th, 2019. They told me I could send a tweet after 3 a.m. on October 16th, 2019, announcing that I was playing the game and composing a review. Within an hour of sending my tweet, I had received 100 DMs. I keep my Twitter DMs open mostly so that brands can apologize to me. 80 of those DMs were from people asking, what's the gameplay like? So let's start by reviewing Death Stranding as a video game. Right about now, critics everywhere are tripping over themselves to dissect Death Stranding's game design, which is all about tripping over yourself. Reviewing Death Stranding is the Mount Everest of game criticism. Fittingly, the game stars a character dressed like he's about to climb Mount Everest twice. Haters in YouTube comments for many months shot down so-called PlayStation fanboys with accusations that Death Stranding was going to be a quote-unquote walking simulator. Well, guess what, haters? Death Stranding is the Gran Turismo of walking simulators. In Death Stranding, you control Sam Porter Bridges, a courier in a destroyed future. Between shriekingly elaborate cutscenes, which sometimes exceed an hour in length, Sam Porter Bridges trudges back and forth across untold miles of blasted terrain, carrying out thankless delivery missions for a wide range of clients, most of whom live deep inside underground shelters and perfunctorily greet him via hologram. If you think carrying packages, sounds easy, then you've probably never had a customs agent compliment you on your suitcase's impeccable organization while a dog sniffs it for drugs. For about the first 20 hours of my 80-hour experience with Death Stranding, I repeatedly found myself imagining Hideo Kojima interviewing an Amazon delivery person in 2015 with the same enthusiasm I possessed when interviewing Hideo Kojima, director of the upcoming Metal Gear Solid 3, in 2004. I imagined him with a voice recorder held an arm's length out. Isn't it depressing to just leave packages with a doorman or in a lobby? Has a customer ever thanked you personally? When a customer gets angry at the damaged status of a package, how does it feel to have the customer's words proxy relayed to you via your supervisor? Boy, it must be hard to mind curbs and steps when the box obscures your view of your feet, right? So how many times per week do you find yourself buying new shoes? When was the last time you upgraded your hand cart? Don't you miss just buying things inside stores, surrounded by other people? Kojima's trademark adolescent-like wonder straddles the line between meditation and obsession, eventually burrowing deep enough into the psyche of a delivery person to carve out a texturally unique game design experience. For 3 years, Kojima hyped Death Stranding to high heck with increasingly densely cryptic imagery-filled trailers, only to now release what is ostensibly an open-world QWOP-like courier sim with occasional freakish horror stealth. It's Metal Gear Solid for Silent Hill fans who just spent $400 on a GoRuck GR1 rucksack. You literally have to press the triggers to grip your backpack straps. Press and hold both triggers to grip both straps for maximum balance. Wow, Sam Porter Bridges would get beat up in a high school in the 1990s. You can hold the trigger down to carry an item in your hand. Just don't let go of the trigger or Sam drops it immediately. Wow, Sam would get kicked off of a high school football team. Click the R1 button to operate a terrain scanner to make sure you'll be able to step somewhere without falling over. And you will fall over a lot. Sam Porter Bridges is an Uber Eats driver in a world where cars are made of al dente pasta. Death Stranding's game design interrogates the player into wallowing in its representation of logistical mundanity. In Death Stranding, a character early on describes logistics as the biggest challenge facing mankind. Kojima looked at Amazon, UPS, DHL, and FedEx and asked, what kind of world would it be if delivery people were, in indisputable fact, the bravest people in the world? That's Death Stranding, in which even the most analog stick-friendly of video game players will likely struggle to keep the character running in a straight line with a comically tall tower of impossibly fragile, apocalyptically important cargo boxes dangerously wobbling on his back. If I told you 3 years ago that you would play a video game in 2019 that made you say good morning to a UPS guy, you'd probably have punched me in the stomach. After you finish trudging through Death Stranding's artistically, addictively miserable 20-hour on-ramp, you will have probably developed enough fastidious habits to utmostly respect any delivery professional. For example, allow me to capitalize on this opportunity to apologize for all the times I almost tweeted about how UPS has never once successfully delivered a package to my Brooklyn apartment. I keep a running tally. They have missed literally 33 deliveries in a row. They just put the boxes straight into the UPS locker by the local laundromat. 4 times in the past year, I have walked out of my apartment to see a UPS driver literally slapping a "you weren't home" sticker on my building's front door. No package in hand, just the sticker. Today, UPS, I officially forgive you, because I just considered the task of parking that honkin' big truck on my street. Death Stranding trains you to think outside the box, outside of the box. The world is the inventory management system. Your shoes are the Rubik's Cube. It's like, what if Breath of the Wild were boring on purpose? What if Assassin's Creed hated you? What if somebody from Denmark directed a film based on John Boyce's 17776? What if the DC Cinematic Universe rebooted Kevin Costner's The Postman? Shortly after the release of Metal Gear Solid 1 in 1998, AAA video game developers began gunking up every action game with stealth mechanics. Multiple Zelda games have even had stealth segments. If Death Stranding is the top-selling game of 2019, we can probably expect an EA Sports FedEx 2021 and a UPS 2K22. Death Stranding is logistics, the e-sport. It's got the reflex-based technical requirements of an action game and also the thinking wizard's gauntlet of terrain mastery that separates video games from interactive contests. As you make ready to embark Point A, it always behooves you to plot your route toward Point B with extreme care, else you get stuck with depleted resources or beef it on a tricky incline and lose someone else's precious valuables. Your only tools for considering your route are your real-world memory of the terrain and the in-game map screen. Like much of Death Stranding's game design, the map screen communicates misery, probably on purpose. It's frustratingly monochrome. It's hard to gauge height differentials. The slightest vector miscalculation might send you to the edge of a cliff, which you might unwisely in your haste try to rappel down using a climbing rope which turns out to be too short. Like I said, the first 24 or so hours of the experience give you pure misery, in which you painfully learn the habits the protagonist already possesses. Every player is probably going to come out of Death Stranding's on-ramp with a different story of the time they got lost. In keeping with the story's post-apocalyptic theme, you find yourself largely alone in this scourged landscape. You primarily witness the presence of others through their legacies. In summary, if I set up a ladder on the side of a mountain, you'll be able to see it, use it, and slam the like button if you found the experience helpful, or if you just want to be nice. If you hear this and think, that sounds too easy, then buddy, buckle up. Death Stranding's world is so disgustingly vast, its terrain so monstrously hostile, that even the combined roping and laddering efforts of the entire video game criticism community could not blunt the edge of the brutal hazing ritual of the game's opening. Even deep into the end game, you will find your Sam exhausted, yourself exhorting your television beyond midnight for sweet relief. Then, before you know it, you're jamming like 100 times on a bridge built by a YouTuber with way more subscribers than you. Your jealousy means nothing in the face of safe passage across this deep river. Hideo Kojima has humbled you. Hideo Kojima himself said in a recent interview that Death Stranding doesn't quote-unquote get fun until about halfway through, and I totally get what he meant. The game forces you to learn how to pay attention to it, and then gently asks you to keep paying attention for the remainder of the experience. Once you've appropriately rewired your brain in formulation of good mindfulness habits, Death Stranding goes ahead and dumps an entire playground's worth of toys on you, and buddy, you're gonna have a wild time. I once heard somebody from NASA say that if humans ever establish a colony on Mars, then living on Mars would be like living in an airport at best, and living in an airplane at worst. Maybe I'm paraphrasing this wrong. I like it though. I remembered this sentiment numerous times during the 70 hours I spent traipsing to and from hard-to-reach points A and B in Death Stranding. The brutally depressing lifestyles of the invisible underground population members reflects pristinely in the utilitarian, mundane repetitiousness of the game's user experience. Like, look at this menu. It's like the video game equivalent of airport immigration paperwork. Here in the Gran Turismo of walking simulators, environmental and equipmental factors resoundingly crash against one another. Death Stranding is hiking for accountants. A farcical avalanche of game design systems poking and prodding one another, piling ever and ever higher until they become a spaghetti mountain of a narrative unto themselves. Calling Death Stranding an action game is like the inverse of calling hiking boots rally shoes. See, I don't really know what I was thinking when I wrote this rally shoes line, and I felt really weird when I was reading it, and then I thought I was going to cut it out when I was editing, and I didn't cut it out. I left it in there because got a deadline and such, and it's easier to make a long thing than it is to make a short thing. Although I just thought this would have been a really good opportunity to be like 2 years after getting over it with Bennett Foddy, Hideo Kojima turns out his own spin on sexy hiking. And then I could have shown Norman Reedus in the shower. That would have been funny. Or it would have been, whatever.
Between its distant narrative beats, Death Stranding crushes you with addictively miserable logistical nightmares. Its landmark-defying expansive geometry mesmerizes would-be memorizers. Turgid full of complex asynchronous online ideas seemingly born day one of Demon's Souls. Floppy with old-fashioned PC gaminess. Filthy with red-hot Octodad sweat, Death Stranding represents Hideo Kojima closing out this decade with his own sublime regurgitation of everything Minecraft, of every early access sorta janky survival game on Steam, of every one of the darkest souls. Death Stranding proves that if you go all the way in on something, you can make even a game that's literally entirely about fetch quests fascinating. Hello, I'm Tim Rogers. You are watching the Kotaku.com Pet Owners Review of Kojima Productions and Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding, a video game written, produced, designed, and directed by Hideo Kojima. On Valentine's Day 2004, the 8th question I asked Hideo Kojima during our first 2-hour sit-down after I scammed Hideo Kojima's publicist into believing I was a writer for Wired Magazine by publishing several articles in Wired Magazine and then convincing the editor of Wired Magazine to vouch for me was, Hideo Kojima, I just read the news. Metal Gear Solid has been canceled forever. What's your next game? As with all the weird questions I asked him that day, Hideo Kojima produced a shockingly specific answer with immediacy. His answer was, I want to make a virtual pet. So I said, like Seaman? And he said, Seaman is interesting, though I mean more of a physical virtual pet. And I said, so like a Tamagotchi? And he said, yes, though I would want to make a deeper connection possible. I would want the player to have full conversations with their pet. And I said, like Seaman? He screwed up the center of his face. Not exactly unlike Seaman, no, he said with a little parenthetical laughs. Kojima told me in 2004 that his dream video game would be, quote, like a person, unquote. He said it wouldn't even involve a game console or a controller. It would have no clear goal. He told me that his dream video game would be, and here I must pause to promise you that I'm not making this up.
I actually definitely am not making this up. He definitely did say what I'm about to say that he said.
A small robot child. As the player/owner/guardian built a relationship with the robot child, they would become aware of a looming, lingering backstory. Eventually, a narrative catharsis would rock them and challenge their beliefs about reality. Also, it would make you feel exactly like a parent. Parenting, Kojima said on Valentine's Day 2004, is probably the perfect game. He then summarized his ideal video game as a game that feels like a person. Kojima's games often present us tiny diorama worlds. Previews back in the day for Metal Gear Solid 2 gleefully presented the information that if you knock over an ice bucket in a kitchen scene early in the game, the ice cubes melt on the counter. I asked Kojima about this on Valentine's Day 2004. I was like, the ice cubes melt, though they don't melt in real time. They melt too fast, like the countertop is heated somehow. Kojima laughed. He said, well, it's not supposed to be completely realistic. It's more of a gesture. They melt at that speed because it's more exciting for a video game. I don't want to make a whole video game about ice melting. 15 years later, he has published a game where the main character carries a Tamagotchi of sorts. Sam Porter Bridges carries a bridge baby, which the game constantly refers to as BB. The bridge baby, communicating via an external robotic scanning device, warns Sam of the presence of invisible other-dimensional monsters known as BTs. If you take too many bad steps, if you trip and jostle the baby's bottle too many times, its shrill cries escape your DualShock 4 controller speaker. You must then soothe the baby into silence by rocking it, using the DualShock 4's tilt sensors. A music box rendition of Brahms' Lullaby plays softly, soothing your bridge baby on a perilous mountain mountain precipice in screaming snow wind becomes a frequent comical sight. If your bridge baby gets too stressed, it enters a state of autotoxemia, which does not sound like something you want anywhere near your baby. Autotoxemia also means BB can no longer spot BTs for you until you get to a safe house and reboot him. Autotoxemia does not bode well for your precious cargo. Through story twists and cutscene cuteness and gameplay hooks, Death Stranding tries whatever it can to make you feel responsibly parental about little BB. Did it work on me? I can't say without spoiling major plot elements, so let this suffice as an explanation. I have been calling my new little tiny Pomeranian puppy BB incessantly since about an hour into Death Stranding. Now, several days after completing the game, I'm still repeatedly calling him Bibby Babbis. That's not even his name. Interestingly, Sam Porter Bridges himself feels more like a virtual pet than BB. As he relaxes in a safe house after some excruciating work, you can rotate the camera to get a better look at him. You can make him make faces in the mirror. You can coordinate the colors of his backpack and suit. You can watch him take a shower. You can put on a hat. You can make him urinate. You can make him take a dump. Or you can confront him with that most difficult of choices: to drink Monster Energy or to put on sunglasses. I can hardly decide that for my real self. Unlike Red Dead Redemption 2, however, you cannot shave his face, which is a shame because he has worse facial hair than me.
He's got worse facial hair than me.
Like, look at this little rat fur glue spot here. On paper, all of this may sound like industry standard video game character customization nonsense, though Kojima and Norman Reedus do a wonderful job of selling Sam as a character and as a person. With glances, winks, and finger points, Sam gently caresses the fourth wall, and compared to Kojima's usual fourth wall sledgehammering, Death Stranding represents artistic restraint. Even inside the fourth wall, Sam comes across as more of a person than the typical video game character. Whenever he eats one of the large, bizarre water bears that serve as the game inhabitants' nutritional food of choice, he expresses disgust. He is constantly and sometimes profanely vocalizing disdain and pathetic frustration while traversing harsh terrain. He talks to himself when things are going well. He calls himself Sammy Boy. He speaks lovingly to motorcycles, especially when they're slightly faster than the usual motorcycles. Way back in 2004, when discussing the hypothetical game that feels like a person, I asked Kojima about Solid Snake's inventory system. I was like, so you can take diazepam to slow the twitching of your muscles to help steady your aim with a sniper rifle, and the game builds such dramatic tension out of these moments where you're lying on your belly underneath a car waiting for a bad guy's feet to come into view so you can shoot him in the ankle with a tranquilizer dart, though at the same time your guy has literally about 900 pounds of military weaponry invisible to somewhere on his person. The logisticality and the video gaminess sort of clash there, don't you think? Kojima replied tersely, I think it's funny. I asked Kojima if he was sick of people asking dumb questions like this, and he replied that no, he actually loved it, and he thinks about that sort of thing a lot.
Yes, he did tell me that he liked that question. He might have been just being nice to me. I don't know. I actually have a photograph from that day that I first interviewed Kojima, and I don't want to put it in this video. Maybe I'll flop it in right here. I'll put a little marker here. Maybe put that photo in there. Maybe give it about a frame. If you think you can pause it fast enough, you can see the picture of me and Hideo Kojima. He put his arm around my back. He touched me.
15 years later, it's quite clear to me that Hideo Kojima was possibly, all the way back in 2004, planning to someday make a game about a guy who has to carry a lot of heavy, wobbly stuff across hostile terrain. I feel like the logistical focus of Death Stranding and Kojima's long ago statements on the potential of the virtual pet genre are not at all unrelated. Anyone who owned an original Tamagotchi way back in the day can tell you that the primary catharsis of that little plastic egg was its intrusive insistence on annoying you. If we apply that persistent annoyance into a quote-unquote action game, we end up with something like Sam Porter Bridges' wobbly box stack, or the fact that his shoes can wear out and then he'll start slowly losing blood because he's walking around barefoot. So, Is BB a virtual pet? Not really. It's more like an item you have to treat preciously. Is Sam Porter Bridges a virtual pet? That is a more interesting question. Sam is about as much our BB as BB is Sam's BB. Seeing as you can make him drink Monster Energy, wear sunglasses, and urinate into a river, maybe all at the same time, I won't spoil it. I'd say Sam qualifies as a virtual pet. Also, you're going to watch him take a lot of showers. You can make him remove his own bloody toenails. You can make him massage his own shoulders, from which he derives much pleasure. Having said that, for the entire last half of the game, I went on a dumper strike. I refused to let Sam drop a deuce. Meanwhile, I increased my CryptoBiot consumption. I ate as many as I could whenever the game presented me an opportunity to do so. I let Sam sleep at every safe house, and every time I refused him a sit down on the throne. Blustery wind in his face, jagged rocks ripping his feet to shreds through his broken boots. All I wanted was to hear Norman Reedus gruffly mutter,
I gotta take a dump.
Unfortunately for all listening realism aficionados, Sam Porter Bridges did not complain once. In summary, immersion denied. Hello, I'm Tim Rogers. You are watching the Kotaku.com film review of Hideo Kojima and Kojima Productions' Death Stranding, a video game directed, designed, produced, and written by Hideo Kojima, with trailers edited by Hideo Kojima. Hideo Kojima once famously said that 70% of his body is movies. This is interesting because most people's bodies are 70% water. Kojima's games reflect his affection for films about as frequently as they remind you of video games. Kojima's games are both things that you watch and things that you play in such contentious balance that I think maybe the absolute weirdest genre of comment on a video game forum is the one where someone says they think Kojima's cutscenes are too long. Like, if you're not chill with the cutscenes, how are you chill with the game? Cutscene and gameplay in a work of Kojima are so sublimely, inextricably codependent that stating a preference for one over the other seems like something a pathological liar would do. Aware of this derisive discussion in the wake of Metal Gear Solid 2, I asked Kojima on Valentine's Day 2004, point blank, do you like movies more than video games? He froze. Slowly, a grin crept onto his face. If you'd like to know what kind of grin it was, look at his Instagram. Find a picture of Hideo Kojima standing less than 4 feet away from Mads Mikkelsen. It was that kind of grin. After a microscopic hesitation, Hideo Kojima replied, "There are things that games can do better than films. If we use those skillfully, then games are absolutely better than films." Back in 2004, Kojima told me about some of his favorite films. He talked about Russian films, about Italian films. The list he rattled off as having inspired Metal Gear Solid 2 ran from David Lynch to Total Recall. In Death Stranding, I feel David Lynch. I feel Total Recall. I feel Nicholas Winding Refn. Maybe I'm projecting, though I also feel the work of Paolo Sorrentino, director of The Great Beauty and The Young Pope. Some of the earlier dialogues in the game were so profoundly, absurdly surreal in their David Lynchian matter of factuality that I absolutely had to turn the subtitles off to allow them to land under their own thunder. Most strongly, I feel Andrei Tarkovsky. In late 2004, Kojima and I had a conversation about Tarkovsky's film Solaris. I had said, you can't just make a game that's like Solaris, though. It would be too boring. Kojima furrowed his brow like that was a challenge. In Death Stranding, Kojima weaponizes Tarkovskyan emptiness through game design. Of Shadow of the Colossus and Gears of War, I once wrote in 2006 that video games create their best drama during moments that mainstream films would edit out. In Shadow of the Colossus, for example, you spend your most memorable moments clinging for dear life to some flailing hairy beast. In Gears of War, the heaviest drama that you feel is when you crouch behind a wall, waiting for the enemy to make a mistake. Movies would cut the 10 minutes of hanging on the back of a hairy beast down to about 40 seconds. Games, on the other hand, thrive during those 10 minutes. Much and deeply as we all may love minutely manipulating a sniper rifle, taking aim, and remote owning a distant noob, video games thrive in the mundane. It is not the click of the left mouse button or the puff of smoky blood that we remember. It is the lying in wait. It is the holding of our breath in tandem with our virtual avatar. It is the aiming, not the shooting, that owns the noob. Likewise, Death Stranding thrives during its long, slow walks, especially the parts where the scenery becomes gorgeous just as a mesmerizing song kicks in. With stealth in Metal Gear Solid and now with hostile terrain in Death Stranding, Kojima and his teams have always tactically encouraged mindfulness in disproportion to action. Kojima always wants you to pay more attention to your virtual surroundings than you would to your real-life surroundings. By making a game where you can fail your mission if you stub your god-darn toe on one tiny rock, Kojima encourages you to be paying so much attention to every detail that once plot beats start hitting, you will be screaming. Again, game design and narrative wash one another's hands in a perfect helix. The Tarkovsky reference I made a minute ago was more than a mere name drop. Both Death Stranding and Tarkovsky's Stalker share numerous elements. In Death Stranding's world, porters are like Stalker's stalkers, people who, for whatever reason, are able to traverse ghostly, haunted terrain which terrifies every other inhabitant of the world. Porters and Stalkers both are trusted with tasks and errands by members of a helpless populace. I will say no more of Death Stranding's plot. I realize everything is a spoiler, so allow me to speak nebulously and texturally. Here goes. I'll be honest, I do not smoke weed. Having said that, I love weed stuff. I've seen the band Boris like literally 60 times. I love glacially slow movies. I listen to binaural beats when I sleep. I love ambient music. I love loud, pleasant hums. I enjoyed the first 20 minutes I ever spent in an MRI. I love sitting around and thinking. I also once went to an all-night Tarkovsky marathon with a friend possessing smuggled edibles. The films were all in Russian with no subtitles. I was no less bored than my friend was. I just love stuff with confidence in its own texture. Death Stranding's helix of cinema and game contains about as much Tarkovskyan slowness as one could possibly cram into a game before it becomes a certifiably bad game. And it's all the better for it. Of course, as Kojima games are wont to do, Death Stranding does occasionally temporarily abandon core components of its carefully crafted game design systems in the pursuit of better cinema. I genuinely admire Kojima's games for letting go of their darlings like this. I genuinely love how much rule bending you can get away with in a Kojima game. Death Stranding took me 70 hours to get through the main story, and it's going to take me about 80 hours to edit this video, so let me tell you, I was pretty much Tarkovsky's nationality through this whole game. Toward the end, I got sloppy. I was taking terrible tumbles. My Sam was made of noodles. I could see better routes. I acknowledged their presence. I just wasn't taking them. I was falling from rock to rock down sheer cliffs and dealing with the damage later. Kojima's games always let you get away with bending the careful rules. They never explicitly make you feel bad about it, though the delicate cinematography elsewhere in the game encourages you to understand that you could be playing better. You could be respecting the game more. And when you do play the game well, performing the role of a dramatic film protagonist with appropriate grace and honor, you feel great. In summary, Death Stranding is basically Andrei Tarkovsky's Super Mario Bros. The movie, the video game. It stars an ill-advisedly facial-haired working man with curious dietary habits, dressed in the uniform of his trade, and a cap with part of his name on it, contending with alternate dimensions whilst questing from stronghold to stronghold at the behest of a blonde woman in a dress who is taller than him, and there's a baby. In summary, is Death Stranding a good film? In short, no. It's not, because it's not a film. It's a video game. Also, if we're comparing it to a film, even in its cutscenes, the pacing is a nightmare. So what I'm saying is, it's less of a film and more of a book. Hello, I'm Tim Rogers. You are watching the Kotaku.com book review of Hideo Kojima and Kojima Productions' Death Stranding, a video game authored by Hideo Kojima. Before playing Xevious and deciding to become a game developer, Hideo Kojima aspired to write novels. I asked him about his novels back in 2004. He told me the title and a plot synopsis of his first, ultimately unpublished novel. I've never seen the information published anywhere else, so I'm going to respect its privacy. Kojima's literary tastes are like if you brought a shotgun to a library. I mean that in a non-violent way.
I actually want to point out that when I first interviewed Kojima, I asked him what the most recent book was that he had read, and this is true. I shouldn't keep saying this is true. It makes it seem like I'm a liar. I asked him what the most recent book he had read was, and he said it was the goddamn Da Vinci Code, and he said he loved it, and I thought that was really funny. And I've told people that privately for like a very long time, kind of as like a joke. Here's the thing. I've read all of the Twilight books. I've read all of the goddamn 50 Shades books. I have also read all the great Russian literature. I've read every work of Jorge Luis Borges. We can't judge Kojima on his goddamn having read the Da Vinci Code because I've read the Da Vinci Code, and maybe you have too. I just thought it was really funny for several years that was the book he said he had read.
Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding opens with a quote from a short story called Nawa, meaning rope, by the Japanese author Kobo Abe. Death Stranding goes on to lay down and gently massage the theme of human connections in a manner that would do Abe's story proud. In case you've never read that story, by the way, I would recommend you read it. It's not very long. Unfortunately, I couldn't find an English translation of it available anywhere, so I translated it myself and put it on medium.com just for you. Over the course of its narrative, Death Stranding will recall themes and motifs of science fiction and speculative fiction from over a long stretch of decades. Voracious readers might notice tinges of Thomas Pynchon's postmodernism, Kobo Abe's pointy absurdism, or even a little Haruki Murakami magical nonchalance. Perhaps most relevantly, the story evokes memories of the works of Arkady and Boris Strugatsky, authors of the novel Roadside Picnic, which, yes, became the film Stalker. Kojima Productions' studio mascot, the skeleton face astronaut Ludens, is possibly a reference to a race of beings from the Strugatsky brothers' novel The Time Wanderers. That's the final book of the Noon universe, which includes the novel Hard to Be a God, which I would recommend for everybody, not just people who are looking to play Death Stranding. Kojima's works also often relentlessly exhibit what newspaper critics of mainstream genre fiction like to describe as a page-turning quality. As the sun came up in the real world during Death Stranding's closing moments, I remembered that this is a pattern with me and Kojima's works. I can't seem to finish a single one of his games without pulling an all-nighter at the end. Once the story starts to wind down and you think you're going to finish the game before bed, it starts unraveling in a Niagara Falls of fancy exposition. I can say with pristine confidence that I have finished every game Hideo Kojima has directed since the original Metal Gear Solid While the Sun Rose. We could dissect Death Stranding's pacing and themes. We could scrutinize dialogue and discuss the intersection of fantasy, science fiction, and speculative fiction represented by this game's dizzying frisbee of a plot. However, it's not fully possible to assess Kojima's writing as literary fiction. For example, once you've seen the gorgeous cutting-edge graphics of the blasted, barren, terrifying, cold future landscapes, you'll give up wondering how the author might have stylistically depicted them in prose. So we arrive at a possible new equation defining narrative video games. Games equals movies plus books. Fiction, of course, is not the only kind of books. So let's talk about Kojima's undersung status as a non-fiction author. Lately, I see a lot of people pointing to Kojima's Nostradamus-esque prescience expressed in the closing moments of Metal Gear Solid 2, which contains a monstrously long lecture dialogue regarding the loss of humanity via what we can see in hindsight might have been a perfect prediction of the rise of social media. Death Stranding tells many tales of caution regarding our modern society. It shows us a population who lives deep underground, who shuns human contact to the point of ubiquitous asexuality, who wait entitled for package deliveries from a person braver and stronger than they are. It shows us a world where science has literally proven the existence of an afterlife, and spiritualism is therefore no longer quite as valuable. Death Stranding speculates boldly upon a future where Amazon is God. They could have called it the Bezos ultimatum. For example, the first time I saw Sam's windowless underground private bedroom, my immediate thought was that I would definitely live there right now. As the story continued and I visited dozens of similar bedrooms, I started to wonder exactly how bad am I supposed to feel that I would definitely live here. It bears repeating that Kojima said in an interview recently that the game does not quote-unquote get fun until about halfway through. He was specifically referring to the slow-paced, repetitive, Bennett Foddian struggle-core gameplay of the opening chapters, in which the player is helpless and weak. Yes, in later chapters you unlock better gear, you get robot legs that let you run faster. Soon you can fabricate vehicles, you can collaborate with players online to build roads across the whole continent. We could do it if we just got over ourselves and took time away from the main quest to deliver materials to one road node each. And yes, the game does eventually give you weapons with triggers which fire projectiles. The first half of the game is miserable from more than just a tactile design perspective, however. The writing constantly assaults you with new terms and words. Death Stranding's glossary rapidly becomes a hostile terrain in and of itself. One quickly becomes as lost in the library of dictionaries required to comprehend Death Stranding's world building as they will become lost in Death Stranding's world itself. You could generate 100 Kojima bingo cards and not get a bingo within the first 20 hours of this story. It's that dense. Bring a hacksaw because you're gonna need it to get through this jungle of vocabulary salad. There's a character literally named Bridget Strand. Bridget as in bridge it, as in put a bridge over it. And there's a company called Bridges, which is connecting America. If this were any more on the nose, it would be a nose. Finally, you might want to keep a phone charger near you on your sofa because you're going to burn out your phone battery looking at Wikipedia. Just go ahead and look up aphenphosmphobia right now to get it out of the way. Of course, I already knew what aphenphosmphobia meant for a really complicated reason we do not have time to get into here. Hello, I'm Tim Rogers. You are watching the Kotaku.com Hideo Kojima review of Kojima Productions' and Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding, the new video game designed, produced, directed, and written by Hideo Kojima. Recently, Hideo Kojima made a tweet listing the areas in which he was involved in Death Stranding's development. It was a long list of areas. Some people felt squirmy about his self-pride. They saw him as minimizing the work of his large team of talented developers. Others said that maybe it was a ham-fisted translation mishap, that Kojima was merely saying he was involved in all of these areas and that he took responsibility for them. I say it's a little bit of both. On the one hand, everyone I know who has ever worked with Kojima says the man has nuanced self-awareness and an excellent sense of humor. On the other hand, yes, the man is proud of himself. I have played all of his latest video game, and I declare with a critic's distance that he deserves to be proud of himself. Whether Kojima is a true auteur or a good artist or whatever is a ticket to a boring conversation. For best and for worst, Kojima is more himself than any game director out there. The buyer of a Hideo Kojima game understands the pedigree of the product from moment zero. Kojima's games are full of himself, to a degree no one else's games ever have been. Yes, certainly, we definitely should have more games of such towering budgets helmed as visionarily by more diverse creators. I'm sure plenty of people out there could do what Kojima does given the opportunity. It represents a puzzle right now, today, to review a game directed by Hideo Kojima without addressing the opportunity Kojima brings with him from Konami. Death Stranding is a large game made by technically a new studio, though that doesn't qualify it as just some indie game. Let's instead appreciate the fact that Kojima got the huge blank check to make this enormous, bonkers, bizarre, book-like video game because of his history. Kojima has paid slow dues over many decades. Even ignoring the due-paying element, one would struggle to write a lecture about narrative design without describing Kojima's early contributions to the art. Hideo Kojima has been around. Death Stranding represents sense him being around louder and clearer than ever before. For years, we've derided Hideo Kojima for his games' problematic elements or hammy dialogue. Whatever cogent observations he seemingly made in the past, we all beheld with awareness both of his luxurious habits and of the possibility that luck might have led him to the place where he ended up. I, for one, have always given him the benefit of the doubt. I've seen him for what he is, an honest man hanging on to the creative spirit of a 12-year-old, a spirit that I, too, once had, which I perfectly lost somewhere along my way between then and today. I have seen all of Death Stranding. It feels surreal to type that sentence because for the longest time I too presumed it would never emerge as a real game. I have seen all of Death Stranding. I sat in my cold living room with my little Pomeranian bridge baby on my lap, weeping like a weirdo at the song that plays over the credits. I knew then that right now, right this minute, some critic somewhere had already typed the sentence, Hideo Kojima has done it again. In the interest of subverting cliches, I won't type that, even though I just did. Instead, allow me to declare with finality that Death Stranding is the most Hideo Kojima game Hideo Kojima has ever made. It is a game so bursting full of a person and their ideas that one needn't even focus on the exact texture of the ideas to appreciate the gesture of the spectacle. This game is enormous. There has never been another video game like it. At long last, I feel perfect vindication at having given Hideo Kojima the benefit of the doubt for the past 2 decades. In its cheekiest Kojima moments, Death Stranding nails me to the wall with unexpected laughter. In its most "where are you going with this, buddy?" moments, it slaps me hard in the face with the density of its personality. In its quietest moments, it inspires an awe I have never seen Kojima attempt. In eschewing Metal Gear Solid's perfectly polished geometrical level designs for sprawling, unknowably vast, fascinatingly empty-ish open-world terrain, Kojima's range as a creative director impresses me. In its punctuations between contemplations, Death Stranding punches me in the stomach with a dozen feelings at once. As per my manipulation, the virtual cable guy inside my television finishes a perilous, slow traversal of another stretch of waste, inserts his magical key at the bunker outpost computer terminal, boots up the network, and brings other players' structures online. Right there, materializing in front of me, is a safe house with 9,000 likes already, built many hours before me by a critic at a video game publication who probably didn't have to dink around for 6 hours, 20% of the way through the game, to capture footage for a video review. Here at last is the latest shot fired in the battle of Hideo Kojima versus the United States of America. We have crossed the frontier, and look, someone has already set up a McDonald's franchise. The very nature of a Hideo Kojima game dictates that one critic alone cannot review it. The true review of a Kojima game is the endless conversation and speculation perpetrated by its players. This review takes years to compose. Kojima's games are treasure troves. We can't simply get the experiences out of our system the way friends driving home from a movie theater might. We need a book club. The true review of Death Stranding will be visible in the REI core nylon jumpsuit attire, which shall rise into ubiquity around 2021. I feel so much more than the tangential words I have spoken in this review. I can't speak most of what I feel because I don't want to diminish your experience. This review feels empty without my gushing, copious spoilers at you. I won't do that, so once again, allow me to speak nebulously. With Death Stranding, Hideo Kojima says something genuinely important about the discomfort and discomforting nature of a destroyed future. Did you play Metal Gear Solid 4 in 2008? If so, did you like it? For 3 years, we, the game likers of the world, have crouched down in the crown of weeds at the base of Hideo Kojima's alabaster tower, eagerly licking every downward trickling driplet of the maple syrup of what the heck and the agave nectar of gimme some more. Whether Hideo Kojima is an auteur, a genius, an artist, all three, or none of the above, Nobody in the game industry builds mystique or puts together an interactive entertainment experience like Hideo Kojima. When Metal Gear Solid 4 arrived in 2008, an elephant strutted into the room with it. Here was a game whose like we might never see again. Metal Gear Solid 5 exists, though by that point Kojima had gone Hollywood with power, his inner misfitism crushed beneath game designerly restraint and the will of corporate overlords. You cannot convince me that Metal Gear Solid 4 does not represent the shrillest artistic scream yet heard in the AAA gamosphere of its time. Metal Gear Solid 4 presented me with a masterpiece of such peculiar structure that in order to adequately review it, I felt the need to review what I considered the 25 best games of all time, only so that I might lovingly put not Metal Gear Solid 4 at the top. At the time of Metal Gear Solid 4's arrival, a friend remarked that we had never seen and might never see another game like it. Metal Gear Solid 4 had baked so long and so fully in the lore of its forebears that it transcended self-importance and teleported firmly into the territory of self-necessity. If Metal Gear Solid 4 had been any more self-absorbed, it would have been invisible. Metal Gear Solid 4 in 2008 presented us the most roundly robust, thorough collage of a game director's psyche we had ever experienced. Maybe some of it was dumb, maybe some of it was gross, maybe some of it was tedious, maybe some of it was problematic. Absolutely all of it, however, was Kojima. Never before had a video game so clearly, loudly been the product of some definitely existing person. Until Death Stranding. Death Stranding, transcending even Metal Gear Solid 4, shows us pure, loud, sticky wet, piping hot Hideo Kojima. If you've ever fancied the notion of grinding Hideo Kojima into a fine powder and freebasing him, the first 2 hours of Death Stranding might liquefy every bone in your body.
Heck, that's only if the Kojima Productions studio logo splash doesn't flat out kill you first.
The ensuing game deals us up again and again what we expect when we hear Hideo Kojima's name. A whole teacher's petly bonker bucket bounty of stuff fragments. Some of it dumb, most of it fun, lots of it weird, and absolutely all of it deep-rooted into a concrete foundation of game designerly fundamentals. It begins, it middles, it winds down and down and down, and then it comes to an end and, well, look. I've been critiquing video games on some kind of a professional level for 20 years now. I have written reams of text about the works of Hideo Kojima alone. I got my first freelance writing offer because of a stupid essay in which I compared Metal Gear Solid 2 to the work of Japanese author Kobo Abe. I'm not about to shake the criticism tree and let platitude fruits bonk me on the head about Death Stranding, a game that literally begins with a quote from a Kobo Abe story and ends with, well, you'll see. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say, Hideo Kojima has done it again, even though I did just say it. Instead, I'll say this. Hideo Kojima has finally done it.
Hideo Kojima has finally done it, I say here. And with the final trailer that he released minutes before I came into this room, he finally did it really hard. He did it like 800%.
In closing, when I completed Death Stranding, the sun was just about all the way up. I lifted my sleeping little puppy off my lap and put him into his cage. I locked the gate while he slept in his little pink bed. He didn't start yapping at me until I was already halfway done brushing my teeth. I went out to his cage and looked at him. He was jumping up and down, panting, yipping, poking his little paws out at me. What a remarkably, shockingly honest creature. All he wants in the world is to be palpably near another warm, living creature. I crouched down and looked the sweet beast in the eyes. I apologized to him with human words. I told him he had to sleep alone until he learned how to not take a dump in my bed. He couldn't understand a word I was saying. He rubbed as much of his little head against my hand as he could through those plastic cage bars. The creature was hungry enough for even the tiniest little touch. Lacking human words, potently possessive of superhuman honesty, this puppy pressed the top of his head at the tip of my index finger. The gesture of this little puppy following the spellbinding, head-aching, sun-rising all-nighter conclusion of Death Stranding brought me, for a moment, literally to tears. I got in bed. My girlfriend woke up for a moment. She asked what time it was, and I answered, definitely time to go to bed. She asked, did you finish it? I said, yeah. She asked, was it good? I froze. Hideo Kojima once made a famous analogy to steak. He said the PlayStation 3 was like a steak you can have at a fancy restaurant, the Xbox 360 was like a steak you can eat at a friend's house, and the Nintendo Wii was like a steak you make yourself at home. With Death Stranding, Hideo Kojima has finally made a game that is like eating 60 pounds of vegetables at gunpoint. Does a silky slab of meat and a triumphant pile of potatoes await afterward? I won't say. In summary, wow. I need the dumbest game possible right now. Dude, that Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order game is right around the corner. And Pokemon. Wow, I can't wait to level up some Pokemon. Anyway, that's all I've got. Thanks for watching. I'm Tim Rogers. I was born stupid. However, I will not die hungry. Video games forever. Kotaku.com. Oh, also, the game has Conan O'Brien in it. Did you all see that? Did you see that? Kojima tweeted about that. It was on Conan. I just want to let you all know we here at Kotaku.com found Conan O'Brien in the game before they revealed that Conan O'Brien was in the game. Heather Alexandra did up a little clip of finding Conan O'Brien, and we were going to post it eventually when we were allowed to post it. So Kojima stole our clicks, basically, and Conan. I mean, of course, they weren't going to just put Conan O'Brien in the game and then not say that he was in there. See, I've got these monster energies here. These actually are not mine. These belong to Eleanor Fye at Gizmodo. She orders them and has them brought in. I've actually never had this one. It's the Monster Rehab. 10 calories? It's not bad. Actually, this one is mine, this purple one, and it is ice cold. Let's go ahead and take a sip of this. I've actually never had this purple one. It's got 0 calories. Ultraviolet, it's called. Not kind of not something you really want to put into your stomach because it makes you think of radiation. So. Tastes like something you drink in the old high school cafeteria.